I've put the two full videos relevant to this on Twitter, and you're welcome, nay even encouraged, to share them. The link's in the description. The BBC put out a Lucy Letby documentary on Panorama, which was pretty good overall, I thought. However, towards the end they talked about apparent mischief on an earlier occasion in 2012 and 2015, which the Cheshire Police is now considering for further charges over. And it looked quite damning, and it would also result, of course, in everything suddenly going sub judice again, i.e. you can't talk about it. And the only reason this thing has now blown up and got the kind of legs it has is because people can talk about it. So going sub judice and shut up would really suit the establishment right now. But here, unfortunately, the BBC got everything wrong. They have now updated the documentary, and the original is no longer available for download. However, I kept a copy of it on my Sky Plus box. So first, have a little listen to this.
Liverpool Women's Hospital compiled its data by looking at what are called ventilated shifts. That's a 12-hour period where a baby's been on a breathing tube. There are 2 shifts every day. So, if you have 10 ventilated babies on a unit for 5 days, you would have 100 ventilated shifts. On average, a tube came out unexpectedly in less than 1%. Lucy Letby worked around 50 shifts. The tube came out on around 20 of them. That's about 40%.
This turned out to be fiction, so they ditched it and redid it, we have to assume, correctly.
Liverpool Women's Hospital went back to review the records of what are called ventilated shifts. These aren't working shifts. They're a 12-hour period where a baby's been on a breathing tube. The review found that for every 100 ventilated shifts where Lucy Letby wasn't involved in the care of a baby, tubes came out unexpectedly in less than 1. The same review looked at ventilated shifts in 2015 where Lucy Letby was involved in the care of a baby. It found there were 11, and that tubes came out during 4 of those ventilated shifts. That's 36%.
Bit of a difference there, you have to admit.
Lucy Letby worked around 50 shifts. The tube came out on around 20 of them.
The same review looked at ventilated shifts in 2015 where Lucy Letby was involved in the care of a baby. It found there were 11, and that tubes came out during 4 of those ventilated shifts.
So 20 out of 50 was actually 4 out of 11. And around 50 shifts is how they phrased it. What does around mean? Does it mean we don't know? Because it turns out that they didn't know. We start off with these around 50 shifts, and they assign 20 or 40% to Lucy Letby. Then, in the correction, they do away with the word around completely, and they insert the new correct number, which is 11. 11 shifts in total, rather than around 50, of which tubes were dislodged on 4 occasions, rather than 20. I don't know in what universe 11 can be interpreted as around 50, or how the BBC got the numbers so spectacularly wrong. Also, the presentation of the new numbers is curious. They could have taken the original incorrect 50, cut out 39 and highlighted the 4 dislodging occasions, but they didn't do that. They took 11 such and blew them up so they fill the whole screen, leaving the highlighted 4 looking an awful lot bigger. The proportions are near enough the same, 36%, 40%, no particular difference. So they got the proportions right, but they blew the actual numbers way up. How can that happen? Maybe did a contact or something tell them, well, it's around 40% and the actual numbers are something like less than 100 overall, and then they just invented these 50 occasions of being on shift, which was actually just those occasions. And although the proportions are the same, 36%, 40%, such small numbers are always very prone to variance and are unreliable, which is always the case when you've got a very small sample. You always want a bigger sample if you can have one. Imagine like it was 200 dislodgements out of 500 shifts, then that would be a slam dunk. Take away 3 from those, 197 makes absolutely no difference. Take away 3 from the actual 4 that we've got, and you're left with almost nothing at all. So such small numbers are always unreliable. And this is also relevant. So this was the original.
In 2012 and 2015, Letby worked briefly at Liverpool Women's Hospital.
And this was the update.
In 2012 and 2015, Letby trained briefly at Liverpool Women's Hospital.
Worked implies professional status, and she wasn't at the time. She was still a trainee. So we start off in the original version with a professional nurse having a tube dislodged 20 times over 50 shifts total, and we end up with a trainee nurse with just 4 dislodgings out of 11 shifts in total. And then there's this, for which the clip I just played is relevant, so I'm going to play it again with a few necessary seconds added on.
In 2012 and 2015, Letby worked briefly at Liverpool Women's Hospital. A hospital review has found that babies' breathing tubes came out 40 times more often than normal when Lucy Letby was on shift.
2012 and 2015, which then goes on to the 20 out of 50 false claim, and that leads us to assume that 2012 is another year of shenanigans, and we hear no more about 2012 in the original. But then we get this in the update.
We also understand breathing tubes came out during ventilated shifts involving Lucy Letby in 2012. We don't have the figures, but understand it happened much less often than in 2015.
In 2012, something happened. We don't have the numbers for that, but we do know that they're much lower again. Which begs the question, how can we know that if we don't have the numbers? I have no idea. So in summary, we have this. Original false claims. Fully qualified nurse Letby over 50 work shifts in 2012 and 2015 saw breathing tubes dislodged on 20 occasions. False claims now updated correctly. Trainee nurse Letby over 11 work shifts in 2015 only saw breathing tubes dislodged on 4 occasions, and an unknown but much lower number in 2012. And this here is the BBC's written explanation of what you've just seen. And to finish, this is what her new lawyer, Mark MacDonald, had to say to the BBC when they originally put those claims to him.
Letby's defence haven't seen the details of the hospital's ventilated shifts review.
I think it's a complete load of rubbish. Where's the evidence?
If it were true, it would be pretty alarming, wouldn't it?
It would mean if it were true. It's you know, show the evidence. Show the evidence. This was a bold assertion, and as far as I can see, no evidential basis to it whatsoever. If I'm wrong, I'll be corrected. If there is something, then show us.
It's a complete load of rubbish. Where's the evidence? Well, we have now seen the evidence, and it's a complete load of rubbish. The proportions were correct, but the actual numbers were so small that absolutely nothing can be done with them. She was still a trainee at the time, not a professional nurse, and absolutely nothing untoward was going on in 2012, which wasn't at all clear in the first video and was cleared up in the second one. So if the Cheshire Police, in their desperation to bring new charges in order to make this whole thing sub judice again and have everybody gagged from talking about it, if they do go ahead and bring new charges, I would love to see how that's going to pan out.